Hey guys, tonight we wake up on a bed of straw, inside a longhouse that smells like wood smoke, wet wool, and a hint of yesterday's boiled onions. Outside, a dog howls at nothing in particular, and inside, a goat stares at you like it's offended by your continued existence. You blink in the dim gray light filtering through a hide covered window. Your back aches, your toes are cold, and your first coherent thought is, oh, great. Another day in 873 AD. Welcome to your life as a Viking Shieldmaiden. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes adjust to the gloom of the longhouse as you shove aside the fur blanket clinging to your shoulders like an affectionate raccoon. The fire in the center hearth has long since turned to ash, and the air bites with the crisp chill of pre-dawn frost. You wrap a scratchy wool shawl around your shoulders and tiptoe past a sleeping uncle, two cousins, and a chicken that refuses to stay outside. You step outside into the freezing breath of the fjord. Your village clings to the edge of a rocky inlet like stubborn moss. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the sky is a murky indigo, stained with streaks of burnt orange. Seabirds wheel above you, already screaming about something you don't care to understand. Somewhere, someone's chopping wood. Somewhere else, someone's already arguing over cod. You clomp through the muddy path toward the stream, where women are rinsing linens and occasionally swatting each other with wooden paddles. You nod politely and kneel beside the water, plunging your hands into the near glacial current. The shock wakes you fully, just in time for the morning ritual. Washing your face with melted snow and scrubbing your skin with lye soap that smells like regret and pine tar. No toothpaste, just a twig you chew on until the fibers fray. Congratulations, your Viking toothbrush is now active. You try not to gag. Back at the longhouse, breakfast is not great. Your mother serves up bowls of barley porridge that taste faintly of goat. She slaps your younger brother's hand as he tries to sneak a handful of dried apples. You all sit cross-legged around the hearth as the flames struggle back to life. It's not cozy. It's smoky, claustrophobic, and someone keeps passing gas. You eat in silence, except for your brother, who complains loudly about how itchy his tunic is and how he definitely has lice again. You do too. Everyone does. That's just Viking ambiance. Your father finally emerges, already armored, already annoyed. He eyes your axe, yes, your actual axe, not a metaphor, and mutters something about keeping it sharp this time. You're not supposed to train today, but that won't stop you. Shield maidens aren't exactly standard fare in the village. Some whisper about you. Others laugh. Most just hope you don't embarrass the family name or set anything on fire again. Outside, the training field is little more than a patch of churned up earth near the goat pens. You stretch your arms, twirl your axe once or twice, then start running drills with your friend Ragna, whose teeth are way too white for someone living in the 9th century. You exchange blows, sparks flying from your dulled blades. Your shoulders burn, your hands blister. You grin through the sweat, because this is the part you like, the part that makes the freezing mornings and bad porridge almost worth it. Historians still argue whether shield maidens were myth or reality, some modern scholar would say from their desk chair. But here, Right now, you are one, and your muscles, bruises, and calluses are all the evidence you need. After drills, you help repair a broken fence. A goat escapes. You chase it. It chases you. You both end up tangled in someone's drying laundry, and now your boots smell like sheep pee. A normal Tuesday. You finally manage to catch your breath around midday, perched on a rock overlooking the fjord. The wind cuts through your tunic like it has something to prove. In the distance, long ships bob on the water, moored like resting dragons. You imagine yourself aboard one of them soon, rowing into legend, or at least into mild hypothermia. That's when your uncle finds you and tosses you a sack. Your turn to gather moss, he says. Not heroic, not glamorous, but essential. Moss, it turns out, is the Viking version of toilet paper, and insulation, and makeshift bandages. You head into the forest, axe at your side, squinting up at trees older than memory. As you search for the soft green kind, your thoughts drift. What's the point of training if you're always sent to do chores? If you're never going to wear proper armor? If you're never going to be taken seriously? You pause beside a fallen log and hear something, like breathing, but heavier. You turn, gripping your axe. Just a wild boar. You breathe again, then reconsider. Wild boars are terrifying. You back away slowly, whispering apologies to the forest. By sunset, you return with a sack full of moss and a new scratch on your arm. The longhouse smells slightly better now that someone remembered to open a vent hole. You settle in for the evening meal. More gruel, more grumbling, more attempts to flirt with the boy across the fire without looking like you're flirting. He throws a berry at you, close enough. As the night deepens, you lie back on your bed of straw and pelts, listening to the wind rattle the roof and the wolves howling on the ridge. You stare at the shadows flickering on the beams above you, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Spoiler, probably lice again, but maybe also glory. Morning starts with your little brother screaming about the cold again. He's not wrong. Your breath fogs in the air before you've even sat up. The fire's out. Again. You huddle under your fur blanket for a moment longer, considering how bad it would be to just not get up. But then you remember your chores, your training, and the promise you made to your mother not to let the goats wander into the granary again. You rise, stretch, and try to ignore the growing stiffness in your back. Viking beds weren't designed for spinal health, or really for comfort in general. You shuffle out to the edge of the longhouse with your arms tucked into your tunic like a penguin. A puff of icy wind smacks you in the face. It's so cold, your eyelashes try to freeze together. Bath time. You trudge toward the washing hut, which is actually just a few wooden walls and a bucket over a shallow pit. There's no steam, no scented soaps, just you, a lump of lye, and a splash of nearly frozen water. You strip down, teeth chattering, and scrub quickly. You try not to think about what's in the gray scum collecting in the cracks of your skin. Probably yesterday's soot, possibly this morning's goat droppings. Could be worse. You've heard that some communities farther inland use fermented urine as soap. Your cousin swears by it. Your cousin also talks to rocks. You finish your bath and dry off with a stiff bit of linen that's about as absorbent as parchment. Then you get dressed, layering tunic over tunic, wrapping a belt tight around your waist to keep the warmth in and the lice from crawling too high. Your boots go on last, fur-lined, cracked, and damp. The left one squishes a little when you walk. You pretend not to notice. Breakfast is still porridge. This time, your mother throws in some leftover bits of smoked herring. It's like eating fishy cement. You don't complain because food is food, and your stomach has already started to audibly grumble. Everyone in the family eats in that resigned, Viking kind of way, like they're enduring a mild punishment from the gods. The only conversation is your father muttering about some local dispute over sheep fencing. Apparently, someone's ram wandered into another man's field, and now they're both threatening to challenge each other to a duel. You nod, as if this makes sense. Because here, it does. Once you've eaten, it's time for chores. Your task this morning, helping your aunt churn butter, which sounds easy until your arms feel like jelly and your hands cramp from gripping the paddle. You churn and try to ignore the sour smell creeping up from the churn. Butter in the Viking Age wasn't exactly Land O'Lakes. It was tangy, sometimes borderline alarming, but it kept people alive. As you churn, your aunt tells you about a dream she had last night, something about a white raven and a tree growing out of a skull. She thinks it means someone in the village is pregnant or cursed, maybe both. Hard to tell with dreams. You politely nod and don't mention the dream you had, which involved a giant talking eel and a never-ending fish stew. Eventually, the butter's done, and you're sent to deliver it to the smith's wife. On the way, you pass by the training field. The men are already sparring, their axes clanging, shields splintering. You slow your step, watching the way they move. The sharp exhale before a blow, the grounded stance, the sweat, the yells. You want to be out there? But you also know you have butter to deliver. You knock on the smith's door with your elbow, and a kid answers, probably 7 years old, already with soot-blackened hands and a missing tooth. He takes the butter without a word. You nod. Transaction complete. As you make your way back to the longhouse, you stop by the stream. You crouch and watch it flow over rocks, glassy and cold. You dip your hand in, just for a second. The chill shoots up your arm, and you gasp. It's almost like a jolt of life. You smile. Small moment, but it's yours. Then you hear your name being called, loudly, from a distance. You groan. That's never a good sign. You return to the village to find your brother standing on the roof of the pig shed. He's trying to impress a neighbor girl by juggling eggs. He is, notably, not very good at it. You catch an egg mid-air and drag him down before he breaks something, like his face. Your mother thanks you with a raised eyebrow and an extra task, plucking feathers from 2 geese. You sit by the fire and start the grisly work. Goose feathers are oily. They stick to everything. Your tunic, your hair, even your eyebrows. And the smell, somewhere between wet barn and sweaty stew. As you work, your grandmother tells you a story about a woman who once fought off a bear with nothing but a spear and a frying pan. She had 7 children and still had time to make berry wine, she says wistfully. You could learn a thing or two. You nod again. Of course you could. Historians still argue whether Viking women participated in combat regularly, or if the tales of shield maidens were more symbolic than literal. But here in your village, it's clear. The line between warrior and worker, between myth and mud, is blurry. Everyone fights in their own way, whether with axes, butter churns, or disapproving stares. That night, you collapse onto your bed of straw and furs, sore and exhausted. You curl up under your scratchy blanket, listening to the fire crackle, the wind whistle through the chinks in the wall, and the distant sound of your brother sneaking out, probably to find more eggs. Sleep comes slowly, like a creeping fog, settling over your bones and your blisters. You dream of longships and lightning, of forests that whisper and skies that never darken. Somewhere in the dream, you're running, not away from anything, but toward something vast and wild and free. You wake up sore in places you didn't even know had muscles. Your fingers ache from yesterday's butter-churning marathon, and your shoulders still carry the memory of swinging that axe during drills. Outside, the wind howls like a vengeful ghost, and the longhouse creaks in protest. Someone already stirred the fire, and you can smell the sharp tang of burning peat, cozy in a Viking sort of way. You sit up slowly and squint at the low rafters overhead, where two spiders are currently in what can only be described as an epic wrestling match. You cheer silently for the smaller one. Today is supposed to be a market day, which mostly means the neighboring settlements are sending their most mediocre traders to sell you things you don't need but will pretend to consider out of politeness. Your father's already dressed, sharpening a blade that looks older than you. He hands it to you with a grunt and says, "Don't trade it for a charm stone again." That was one time, and it was shiny. You throw on your best tunic, not the fancy one with embroidery, because that's still drying after the last unfortunate encounter with a rain barrel, but the good enough one that doesn't smell too strongly of fish. You even try to tame your hair with a carved bone comb. It laughs at your efforts. Breakfast is flatbread, dried trout, and yesterday's leftover porridge reshaped into a patty. You chew it like a champ, while your brother asks the same question for the fifth time. Will there be honey at the market? You don't know. There's never enough honey, ever. Even back then, it was basically liquid gold. And no, mead doesn't count. You and your family make the muddy trek to the trading spot just outside the village, near the runestone. It's not fancy, just a cleared patch of land where people set up stalls made from carts, furs, and whatever looked vaguely like a table. There's a buzz in the air, not literal buzzing, though the flies are already gathering around the smoked fish, but a sort of excitement. Markets aren't just for trading goods. They're for gossip, matchmaking, light bragging, and the occasional scuffle over whose turn it is to stand nearest the only fire pit. You make your rounds with your mother. First stop, the woman selling dyed yarns in shades of blue, red, and something she insists is goat ivory. Your mother barters 3 eggs and a spoon for a skein of deep red, which she'll later weave into a belt or something equally practical. Meanwhile, you eye a display of carved brooches shaped like animals. You reach for one, a little bronze bear, but your mother gives you the look. The one that says, "We're here for barley, not trinkets." You nod solemnly and move on, but you still think about that bear. At the fish stall, your uncle is arguing about whether the dried herring is too brittle. "This one could be used as a weapon," he says, bending one in half until it snaps like an old bone. The vendor glares at him, then at you, as if you're complicit in this herring drama. You shrug. Then come the whispers. "Is that the girl with the axe?" Someone mutters. You feel the eyes, half curious, half doubtful. A shield maiden, they say. Or maybe just a girl who plays warrior in the woods. One old man loudly claims that women shouldn't be allowed to carry blades unless they're carving roast pork. You're halfway to responding when your father steps beside you and says, without looking, "Her axe is sharper than your tongue." The man blinks. You smile. It's petty, but it feels good. You find your friend Ragna by the fire pit, arms full of bread loaves she's helping her aunt sell. She slips you one when no one's looking. It's hard as a brick, but you whisper your thanks anyway. That's what friends are for. Bread bribery and backup during awkward market conversations. There's a commotion by the edge of the stalls. A skald has arrived. An actual traveling bard with a drum and a cloak full of patches. He starts weaving a tale about a dragon that lives under the mountain and a warrior who tricked it with cheese. Yes, cheese. You settle on a log and listen, letting his rhythmic voice lull your senses. For a moment, you forget the cold, the chores, the endless skepticism. You're just a girl, watching stories take shape in the smoke curling from the fire. Historians still argue whether skalds were accurate record keepers or just glorified gossipers with good rhythm. You think idly. Either way, they knew how to keep an audience spellbound. Later, you help load a cart with firewood in exchange for a small pouch of herbs your mother insists will help with digestion and dreams. You're not sure what that means, but it smells like mint and mystery, so you don't argue. The sky darkens faster than it should, clouds rolling in like angry sheep. You hear the distant rumble of thunder. Rare, but not impossible. People start packing up quickly. You grab a bundle of reeds and some leftover bread as the rain begins in slow, fat drops. Your hair soaks in seconds. So much for the comb. By the time you reach the longhouse, you're drenched. Your boots are squishing again, and your hands are full of increasingly soggy trade goods. Your mother hangs everything near the fire. Your brother runs outside again, just to slide in the mud. You decide not to stop him. As night falls, you sit beside your father, both of you sharpening blades in silence. He doesn't say much, but he occasionally glances at your form, how you hold the whetstone, how your elbows move. Then he nods once, like maybe, just maybe, you're not a complete embarrassment to your ancestors. You fall asleep to the sound of wind, thunder, and your grandmother snoring like a war horn. In your dreams, you're standing on a high cliff, axe in hand, hair blowing behind you like a banner, and no one's questioning if you belong there. You're woken before dawn by a bucket of water hitting the floor. Not on you, thankfully, but close enough to splash. Your grandmother stands over you, all sharp elbows and zero tolerance, muttering something about the sea waiting for no one. You groan, roll over, and consider whether becoming a sea raider is worth the lack of sleep. But then you remember, today is your first training run with the longship crew. You bolt upright. Half-dressed and wholly uncoordinated, you jam on your tunic, your belt, your ever-damp boots, and grab your satchel. Your mother catches you at the door and thrusts a hunk of bread in your hand. It's still warm, and for a second, the whole world softens. Then the door slams behind you, and the wind punches you in the face. Welcome to Viking cardio. You jog down the muddy slope to the fjord, lungs stinging, nose running, and regret settling in around your knees. The ship looms ahead, long, sleek, and hungry looking, its prow carved with the head of a serpent that seems to judge your stamina. Captain Arvid, a man with the permanent expression of someone who just bit into a lemon, greets you with a nod and a grunt. You nod back, formalities complete. You clamber aboard and take your seat at the third oar from the bow, next to a man named Schooley, who claims to have once wrestled a bear. You believe him, if only because of the missing ear. The call goes out. Row! And row you do. Your arms scream. Your back protests. The The blisters on your palms form within minutes, like little angry spirits. Water slaps against the hull. Cold sprays your face. The oar feels like it weighs as much as a small tree. You're rowing more or less in rhythm until you lose the beat and smack Schoolie in the shin. He doesn't even flinch, just grunts and adjusts. You row past jagged cliffs and shadowy coves. Seabirds wheel overhead, squawking as if to mock your technique. Your muscles burn, but there's something oddly satisfying about the rhythm, the ache, the way the ship glides forward with each collective pull. A strange pride bubbles up. You're part of something moving, something alive. They give you a short break, and you flop onto a coil of rope like a starfish. Captain Arvid passes out smoked seal meat. It's chewy, oily, and absolutely foul. You eat it anyway. You're starving. Besides, seal meat is an acquired taste. One you haven't acquired yet, but it smells like mint and mystery, so you don't argue. The sky darkens faster than it should, clouds rolling in like angry sheep. You hear the distant rumble of thunder, rare, but not impossible. People start packing up quickly. You grab a bundle of reeds and some leftover bread as the rain begins in slow, fat drops. Your hair soaks in seconds. So much for the comb. By the time you reach the longhouse, you're drenched, your boots are squishing again, and your hands are full of increasingly soggy trade goods. Your mother hangs everything near the fire. Your brother runs outside again just to slide in the mud. You decide not to stop him. As night falls, you sit beside your father, both of you sharpening blades in silence. He doesn't say much, but he occasionally glances at your form, how you hold the whetstone, how your elbows move. Then he nods once, like maybe, just maybe, you're not a complete embarrassment to your ancestors. You fall asleep to the sound of wind, thunder, and your grandmother snoring like a war horn. In your dreams, you're standing on a high cliff, axe in hand, hair blowing behind you like a banner. And no one's questioning if you belong there. You're woken before dawn by a bucket of water hitting the floor. Not on you, thankfully, but close enough to splash. Your grandmother stands over you, all sharp elbows and zero tolerance, muttering something about the sea waiting for no one. You groan, roll over, and consider whether becoming a sea raider is worth the lack of sleep. But then you remember, today is your first training run with the longship crew. You bolt upright, half-dressed and wholly uncoordinated. You jam on your tunic, your belt, your ever-damp boots, and grab your satchel. Your mother catches you at the door and thrusts a hunk of bread in your hand. It's still warm, and for a second, the whole world softens. Then the door slams behind you, and the wind punches you in the face. Welcome to Viking cardio. You jog down the muddy slope to the fjord, lungs stinging, nose running, and regret settling in around your knees. The ship looms ahead, long, sleek, and hungry looking, its prow carved with the head of a serpent that seems to judge your stamina. Captain Arvid, a man with the permanent expression of someone who just bit into a lemon, greets you with a nod and a grunt. You nod back. Formalities complete. You clamber aboard and take your seat at the third oar from the bow, next to a man named Schoolie, who claims to have once wrestled a bear. You believe him, if only because of the missing ear. The call goes out. Row! And row you do. Your arms scream. Your back protests. The blisters on your palms form within minutes like little angry spirits. Water slaps against the hull. Cold sprays your face. The oar feels like it weighs as much as a small tree. You're rowing more or less in rhythm until you lose the beat and smack Schoolie in the shin. He doesn't even flinch, just grunts and adjusts. You row past jagged cliffs and shadowy coves. Seabirds wheel overhead, squawking as if to mock your technique. Your muscles burn, but there's something oddly satisfying about the rhythm, the ache, the way the ship glides forward with each collective pull. A strange pride bubbles up. You're part of something moving, something alive. They give you a short break, and you flop onto a coil of rope like a starfish. Captain Arvid passes out smoked seal meat. It's chewy, oily, and absolutely foul. You eat it anyway. You're starving. Besides, seal meat is an acquired taste. One you haven't acquired yet, but hey, it's protein. Schoolie offers you a sip of what smells like fermented bark and sadness. You politely decline. As the ship coasts back toward the dock, one of the older crew members, a woman named Brynja, calls out for a sparring demonstration. You freeze. She's pointing at you. You stand, legs jelly, heart hammering. She tosses you a practice axe and nods toward the center of the ship. Everyone forms a circle. You square off. Brynja is twice your size and built like she could punch through a wall. You swallow hard and lift your axe. The spar begins. You dodge. Parry. Swing too wide. Miss get clipped in the ribs. Ouch. Then something clicks. You shift your weight. Find your balance. Remember the drills. You feint left, swing right, and nearly land a strike on her shoulder. She grins, not kindly, but impressed. Afterward, you're sweaty, scraped, and glowing from the inside out. Brynja slaps you on the back so hard you nearly fall over. Could have been worse, she says. You take it as the highest of Viking compliments. Historians still argue whether women regularly served aboard Viking longships or if they only joined under exceptional circumstances. But as you look around, at Brynja sharpening her blade with a whetstone, at the girl from the next village steering the rudder, you know that history is never as tidy as the scrolls make it seem. Back on land, you help unload the ship. Barrels of smoked fish, bundles of furs, and a suspiciously large jug, marked only with a rune that probably means do not drink unless you have a death wish. You stash that one in the chief's storage hut. You're rewarded with hot broth and a seat by the fire in the longhouse. Your father clinks his cup against yours. No words, just a gesture. He's not a man of speeches. You smile, hands still tingling from the oar. You're starting to feel it now. Not just the ache, but the identity. You don't have to tell anyone you're a shield maiden. They can see it. In your posture, your bruises, the faint smile you wear, even when your back is screaming. That night, after the fires died down and your siblings are finally asleep, you lie awake watching the smoke trail into the rafters. You trace little shapes in it, a serpent, a raven, a long ship at sea. Your arms are sore, your palms are raw, and tomorrow will be worse. But in the hush between breaths, in the stillness that follows exhaustion, you feel it, that humming thread of belonging. You, the ship, the sea, the axe, all woven together. Sleep comes not like a wave crashing, but like a tide pulling gently, steadily, taking you with it. Morning arrives like a slap from an ice-cold fish. The sun's barely up, just a pale suggestion behind the clouds. And someone's already yelling outside about goats on the roof again. You ignore it. Not your goats, not your problem. Your muscles mutiny as you sit up, every joint sending in its resignation notice. Your hands are raw, your shoulders are stiff, and your legs feel like they've been used as oars themselves. Congratulations. You are now officially in the everything hurts and I'm still going phase of Vikinghood. But today isn't about rowing or axe drills. Today, you're on patrol duty, which mostly means trudging the outer perimeter of the settlement in the snow-mushed mud with two other people and a spear you've barely used outside of practice. You throw on your thickest tunic. Yes, the one with the embroidered deer on the sleeve. Don't judge. And grab your cloak. Your mother insists you eat something before leaving. You oblige, though something turns out to be fermented herring and a handful of dried peas. You swallow it down with water that tastes faintly of last night's ashes. Your companions for the morning are Fridas, who's quiet but has a terrifyingly accurate throwing arm, and Einar, who never shuts up and once claimed he'd chased off a bear by shouting "boo" at it. You suspect the bear just got bored. Together, the three of you walk the edge of the settlement, past the drying racks, past the paddocks, and into the tree-thick fog that clings to the forest border like an old grudge. The trees are silent except for the occasional drip of melting frost and the creak of branches overhead. You try not to look nervous. You're holding a spear, after all. Very pointy. Very impressive. Einar pokes at the snow with his boot and says, "Could be wolves out here." Or Draugr Freydis raises an eyebrow. "You mean the dead walkers?" "Yep," he says with way too much cheer. "One of them came for my cousin once. Took his cow and left footprints that glowed." You resist the urge to roll your eyes so hard they might fall out. Historians still argue whether tales of Draugr were based on actual fears of grave robbing, or metaphorical warnings about greed and dishonor. Either way, in that fog, you can almost see glowing footprints yourself. Your patrol takes you along a ridge overlooking the fjord, where the water churns a dull steel gray under the weight of the clouds. Freydis halts suddenly, kneeling to examine a patch of disturbed snow. You lean over. It's a paw print, large, fresh, and headed toward the sheep pens. "Wolves," she says flatly. "Fantastic." You double back, following the tracks while Einar chatters about how he once scared off 6 wolves with nothing but a cooking ladle. Freydis rolls her eyes. You grip your spear a little tighter. You don't find any wolves. You do, however, find 3 very anxious sheep, a broken fence post, and, oddly, one of your brother's boots. You decide not to ask. By the time you make it back to the longhouse, your boots are caked in muck, your cloak smells of wet animal, and your spear hand is numb. But no one died. The sheep are still accounted for, and you manage to not jab yourself or Einar in the foot, which counts as a win. You settle in near the hearth while the elders prepare the midday meal. Something involving rutabagas, flatbread, and an herb so bitter it could start a fight. You sit beside your grandmother, who tells you how she once patrolled these same hills, but during her time, they had to worry about raids from across the sea. You ask what they did. "We sharpened blades and looked mean," she says with a shrug, then adds, "Worked well enough. The afternoon is devoted to maintenance. You help patch a fence, stitch a tear in your tunic, and clean your shield, which currently smells like goat pee, thanks to its accidental detour into the pen last week. You scrape it down with vinegar and mutter apologies to the leather. Then comes the call from the blacksmith's hut. You duck inside, instantly sweating. The forge blazes, and the air tastes like iron and smoke. The blacksmith, a woman with forearms like tree trunks, grunts at you and gestures toward a pile of damaged weapons. "Fix what you can. Sharpen the rest." You nod, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. It's oddly soothing, scraping burrs off a blade, watching sparks jump from the whetstone, feeling the steel come alive under your hands. You're not just swinging weapons now, you're maintaining them, learning their moods, their flaws. By the end, your fingers are blackened, your tunic is scorched in 3 places, and you have a tiny burn on your wrist. You feel amazing. One blade catches your eye. It's shorter than most, with runes carved along the hilt. The blacksmith sees you eyeing it. Used to belong to a Shieldmaiden, she says. Traded it for food one winter. Good balance, still bites. You ask if you can try it out. She shrugs. As long as you don't lose a finger. Outside, in the fading light, you swing the blade. It hums through the air, light but steady. It's like dancing with a storm that remembers your name. You spin it once, twice, and catch it with surprising ease. Not bad. Not bad at all. You return it, but the feeling lingers, like a secret tattooed onto your palms. That night, during dinner, you find yourself seated between your brother, now mysteriously barefoot, and a visitor from another settlement. She's an older woman, draped in wolf pelts and stories. She tells you about the sea storms, about the southern raiders, about the time she fought off thieves with nothing but a cauldron lid. You ask if she's ever seen a draugr. She smiles slowly and says, "Only once." And I made sure it didn't walk away. You're not sure if she's joking. Later, as sleep drapes its heavy arms around you, you think about blades that bite, patrols in the mist, and runes on hilts that remember. You're not just surviving Viking life. You're sinking into it. Mud, blisters, burning lungs, and all. The air today smells like wet wood, smoke, and something faintly rotten. Probably the fish someone left hanging a bit too long. You wake with a start, not to shouting or a water bucket, but to the rhythmic thump of drums echoing through the village square. You rub your eyes, stretch, and realize it's festival day. Not just any festival, the Feast of Freya, which means music, dance, offerings, and at least 2 people ending up face down in the firewood pile by sunset. It's part holy day, part excuse to eat until you can't move, and part unspoken competition for who can look the most impressive in ceremonial gear without tripping over their own braid. You spring to life, sore muscles or not. Your mother's already stirring a cauldron of porridge, humming a hymn to the goddess as she tosses in herbs, berries, and exactly 1 piece of silver, a token meant to invite luck. You're not sure luck tastes great in porridge, but you'll take what you can get. You help your younger siblings get dressed. There's pain involved, and someone ends up with a beard drawn on their forehead, but it's fine. No one will notice after enough mead. Your own ceremonial garb is less fancy than you'd like. A faded green dress, a fur-trimmed cloak, and a set of arm rings you borrowed from your cousin. You add a belt knife for flair, and because it feels wrong to go anywhere without something sharp at your side. You head toward the village center, already buzzing with activity. Fires crackle in raised braziers. Skins are laid out with offerings. Bread, antlers, carved charms, 1 unlucky chicken. People are weaving flowers into their hair, painting their faces with spirals and runes. You spy Brynja, the warrior who bruised your ribs the other day, wearing a fox mask and balancing a horn of mead in one hand like it's an extension of her arm. The drums get louder, the dancers gather, and suddenly you're being pulled into a circle. You don't resist. You don't want to. You raise your hands. Your feet find the rhythm. You twirl. You stumble. You laugh. The earth spins beneath you, Someone hands you a torch. Someone else throws petals into the fire. The air smells of burning pine and honey. This isn't just celebration, it's ritual. Every movement has a purpose. Every chant is a thread binding you to the others. You're not just dancing. You're part of a living story, an offering of your body and breath to something older than memory. One of the elders speaks, her voice rising above the crackle of flames and the pounding drums. She calls on Freya for fertility, love, and strength in battle. She blesses the village, the animals, even the boats. She throws a bundle of dried herbs into the fire, and a spiral of smoke lifts toward the sky like an answered prayer. You close your eyes and feel it in your chest, that pulsing connection to every person here. You, who train with axes and scrub shields and pretend not to be scared of wolves. You, part of something bigger, older, more dangerous than mere survival. Historians still argue whether Freya was primarily a fertility goddess, a war deity, or both. But to you, here and now, she feels like all of it. Life and death braided together in gold. Later, after the main rites are done, the games begin. You sign up for the wrestling match because, frankly, Einar did, and you refuse to let someone who once got bitten by a duck outshine you. The arena is a muddy ring of stomped-down earth, and the prize is a carved necklace made of boar tusk. Not exactly glamorous, but very Viking. Your first opponent is a boy from the next village over, who underestimates you immediately. That lasts about 4 seconds. You sweep his legs, pin him fast, and pop up before he knows what happened. The crowd cheers. You try to look modest. You fail. You make it to the final round, against Brynja. Of course. She grins. You grin. Everyone else slowly backs away. The match is glorious and ugly. Mud flies. You grunt, twist, nearly fall. She hoists you once, and you almost go airborne. But you counter with a leg hook and a shove that sends both of you crashing into the firewood. It's technically a draw, but they give you the tusk necklace anyway because you're bleeding from the eyebrow and still laughing. You wear it proudly. You earned it. As evening falls, the feast begins. Platters of roasted meat, bowls of stewed roots, piles of flatbread and butter. Someone brought cheese that smells like a challenge. You eat until your stomach stages a protest, then eat a little more. Quirky tidbit of the day. One dish, considered a delicacy, is fermented trout stuffed with herbs and wrapped in tree bark. You try it. You immediately regret trying it. You discreetly hide the rest under a napkin. Music plays on into the night. There's a storyteller performing a dramatic saga involving a troll, a magical talking goat, and a very confused blacksmith. The goat is the crowd favorite. Naturally. You sit beside the fire, watching sparks leap into the star-scattered sky. Your muscles are sore. Your hair smells like smoke and something vaguely sweet. Your new tusk necklace sits warm against your skin. You feel full, not just of food, but of place, of people, of moments that feel like they'll live inside you forever. You look around and realize something. This is the part of history they forget to tell you. The warmth, the celebration, the mundane miracle of just being alive together. You lie back in the grass, your cloak wrapped around you, and stare at the stars. Somewhere far away, wolves howl. Someone's laughing. Someone's snoring. Someone's already passed out with their face in a basket of turnips. And you? You're smiling, sleep tugging gently at your mind. Tomorrow might bring training, or storms, or a boat ride to God's nowhere. But tonight, the world is small and golden and perfect. You wake with a start. Not to drums or shouting this time, but to the sharp, metallic clang of your neighbor trying to hammer something at dawn. It's still dark out, and the dew makes the world shimmer like a dream you haven't quite left. Your body aches in new places: shoulder, lower back, even the webbing between your toes, thanks to yesterday's heroic wrestling match. You sit up, brushing grass out of your hair, the boar tusk necklace still looped proudly around your neck. It smells faintly of pine and whatever you spilled on it during the feast. Mead? Trout slime? Hard to say. Today, you're being summoned, not for punishment, miraculously, but for work. The blacksmith's apprentice broke his hand in what is officially being called a tragic accident involving an angry goose, and now they need extra hands in the forge. You don't argue. You don't even pretend to be reluctant. You've always been curious about the forge, the flickering orange light, the rhythmic hammering, the hiss of hot iron plunged into water. Magic of the mundane kind. You trudge across the village barefoot, boots slung over one shoulder, the damp soil squishing between your toes. The forge is already hot and breathing, smoke curling up like a serpent around the rafters. Inside, the blacksmith, a wide-shouldered woman named Thorgun, who could probably crush walnuts between her biceps, greets you with a nod and a grumble. You know how to hold tongs? You do not. She hands you a pair and teaches you anyway. Soon, you're clamping red-hot iron, turning it, placing it on the anvil as she hammers. Sparks fly. You wince at everyone, half convinced your eyebrows are going to catch fire. Thorgun laughs and tells you to stop flinching like a baby squirrel. You find a rhythm, a flow. It's exhausting, sure, but also weirdly peaceful, like rowing through fire instead of water. You help shape arrowheads, rivets, and something that's either a belt buckle or an incredibly aggressive paperweight. You learn a curious fact. The Norse didn't always make steel the way we think. They often folded soft iron over carbon-rich materials, producing something that wouldn't impress a samurai but could still split a helmet open just fine. Sometimes, bones were thrown into the fire for luck, or intimidation. You ask about it. Thorgun shrugs. Historians still argue whether that was ritual or just recycling. As noon approaches, a man arrives with a shattered shield. It's not just any shield, it's yours. The one you used last week during sparring when Brynja got a little too enthusiastic. A chunk's missing. The rim is cracked. The paint, your careful knotwork, is mostly scorched off. Thorgun lets out a low whistle. Looks like it kissed a dragon. You agree to fix it yourself. She shows you how to soak the planks, how to reshape the curve, how to bind the layers with sinew, and hammer the iron boss back into place. It's slow work, and your arms are trembling by the time you're done, but it looks like a shield again. Scarred, but functional. You wonder if that's how she sees you too. Back home, your mother gives you a cloth-wrapped parcel and a glare that says, "Eat this or I'll feed it to the pigs." It's flatbread, dried apples, and a wedge of cheese so sharp it could count as a weapon. You eat it sitting on a fence post, watching chickens negotiate a turf war over some spilled grain. You're supposed to rest now. Most people are. But you can't sit still. Instead, you climb the hill behind the village, the one with the broken stone circle on top. You've heard stories about it. Ancient sacred site, forgotten gods, maybe a burial place, or maybe just an old party spot with really good views. You settle between two lichen-covered stones, the wind tugging at your braid, and look out. From here, you can see the fjord glinting like a knife. You can see longships at anchor, sails furled tight. You can see smoke curling from chimneys and people moving like ants in the fields. You close your eyes. You listen. The wind hums against the stones. Birds cry out in the distance. Somewhere down below, a child is screaming with the particular intensity of someone who just stepped on a wasp. Life, unedited. And then you hear it. Low, rhythmic, unmistakable. Oars slapping the water. You open your eyes and see a long ship gliding into the harbor, sleek and dark. A red sail with a black spiral. Not one of yours. Visitors. The village stirs. Dogs bark. A horn sounds, short and sharp. You race down the hill, slipping once and nearly spraining your ankle, but you make it in time to see the crew disembarking. They look like you, and they don't. Their tunics are darker, their weapons differently shaped. Their braids are tighter, their eyes wary. They speak your language, but with a strange lilt. They've sailed from the east, Baltic waters, maybe further. Your Jarl greets their leader with a formal nod. Gifts are exchanged, mostly food and iron tools. You sneak closer, curious, and overhear snatches of conversation. They've come with news. War, brewing inland. A rival clan rising. Trading posts burned. And rumors of a monstrous bear that walks like a man. You raise an eyebrow. The visitors look serious. One of them, a girl no older than you, notices your tusk necklace. She nods at it, approvingly. You nod back. You wonder, if your paths had been different, could you have been her? Arriving from a strange land, warning strangers of fires on the horizon. Later, as the visitors set up camp and your village prepares for a feast in their honor, you find yourself back at the forge, touching your newly mended shield, feeling the weight of the day pressing behind your eyes like a warm hand. This morning, you were just another extra pair of hands. This evening, you're someone who held flame and steel and helped rebuild a broken thing. Tomorrow, you might fight. But tonight, you sleep easy. You dream of thunder, of hammers striking anvils so massive they ring across the sky. When you wake, it's still dark, but there's a glint of silver beyond the curtain of your lashes. Dawn. Today isn't a normal day. Today, the village is tense. The visiting clan's ship sits anchored in the harbor, like a watching eye. Its sail droops in the still air. The foreigners, no, allies for now, camp just beyond the longhouse, their murmured conversations rising with the smoke of their breakfast fires. You watch one of them sharpening a strange axe with a crooked haft, the rhythm oddly musical. It makes your fingers itch. Your own people move with a kind of quiet purpose, no shouting, no laughing. Even the livestock seem to sense it. Your favorite goat hasn't screamed in a full hour. Something is coming. Everyone feels it. You're summoned, again, not to the forge, but to the training circle. Apparently, after yesterday's forge work and your miraculous survival of the boar wrestling incident, you've earned a spot in a select group of younger warriors, which sounds flattering until you realize it just means people who are disposable but can hold a spear. You grab your shield, the one you reforged with your own sore arms, and meet the others at the clearing. Brynja is there naturally. She nods at you like nothing ever happened between your jaw and her elbow. You nod back, eyebrows raised, daring her to try again. The Jarl's son, Eirik, paces before you, armored in boiled leather, and an expression that's trying to be serious, but mostly looks like constipation. Today, we train for what's coming, he says. No one knows what's coming. That's the fun part. You spar for hours, sword, axe, and shield. The foreign warriors observe, occasionally joining in. One of them shows you a Baltic trick with a hooked knife, how to feint low, then flip the blade for a wrist cut. You nearly lose your fingers trying to replicate it. Still, it's intoxicating to learn. At one point, you drop your shield and fight with only a short knife. You're faster that way, but also exposed. Eric circles you, sweat dripping from his brow, and says, "Shield maidens are meant to guard the line, not leap into death." You smirk. "Then maybe the line should keep up." He scowls. Brynja chokes back a laugh. You both get punished with extra laps around the training circle. During a break, as you sip thin ale from a cracked horn, you overhear a curious tale from one of the visitors. He claims his brother once saw a woman paralyze an enemy mid-fight just by screaming a certain word. Some believe she was a vulva, a seeress. Others say it was pure madness and coincidence. You lean closer. He lowers his voice. Historians still argue whether that kind of magic ever truly existed, but me, I've seen stranger things. You believe him. In the afternoon, the shield line drills begin. You stand shoulder to shoulder with others, shields overlapping in a wall. It's hot. It's tight. You smell Brynja's armpit far too intimately for your comfort. The drill master barks commands, and together, you move like a single body. Left step, forward lunge, bash, recover, repeat. The rhythm becomes hypnotic, like rowing or hammering. You lose yourself in the repetition, your thoughts floating somewhere between exhaustion and pride. Then the real fun starts. The drill master releases goats into the circle. Actual, real goats. Apparently, this is to simulate the chaos of broken lines. The goats are unimpressed by your formation and instantly cause total collapse. One of them headbutts Eric into a hay pile. You and Brynja end up tangled in each other's legs, laughing too hard to fight back. Somewhere in the madness, a goat tries to eat your braid. You're fairly certain that last part isn't historically documented, but it happens all the same. Later, you help your mother grind barley for flatbread, your arms jelly and your knees scraped. She watches you with a soft frown. "You're getting stronger," she says, not unkindly. You nod. "And hungrier." She slides you a slice of smoked eel. You don't ask where it came from. Probably not from the same goat that tried to eat you. Probably. That evening, the village hosts a storytelling circle. It's not for children, at least not officially. The grown-ups lean in just as eagerly, tankards in hand, cheeks ruddy from drink and firelight. An elder stands in the center and begins. He tells of a legendary shield maiden named Hervor, who once rode alone into a cursed graveyard to demand a sword from her dead father's ghost. She spoke fearlessly, even as spirits moaned and wolves circled. She left with the blade and the curse it carried. You close your eyes and imagine yourself as her, standing beneath the night sky, demanding power from the bones of history. It sends a shiver through you that has nothing to do with the cool breeze. When the story ends, the visitors share one of their own, about a frost demon that wears the faces of missing travelers and lures warriors off frozen lakes. No one laughs. The fire crackles, spitting little embers into the dark. You sip warm milk with honey, trying not to fall asleep right there in the grass. Tomorrow, you're told, there will be a hunt. Not for food, but for practice, for readiness. You nod. You don't know what's coming, but you're starting to feel ready anyway. Later, curled under a fur blanket with your shield resting nearby like a loyal dog, you think about Hervor, about cursed swords and frost demons and goats with vendettas, and about the way your arms didn't shake quite so much when you held the line. You drift off. fingers curled loosely around the handle of your knife, heart ticking in a slow rhythm that matches the drumbeat of the village beyond your dreams. The sky cracks open with the squawk of gulls and the smell of seaweed. You blink against the early morning glare, cold mist clinging to your cheeks. Something about today is sharper, like the air itself has been honed overnight. You lace your boots tight. Today is the hunt, not for deer or wild boar this time. No, this is a controlled hunt, half war game, half festival, meant to simulate real raiding scenarios. Because nothing says good morning like tracking your neighbors through the forest and pelting them with blunted javelins. The teams are drawn. You're with Brynja, Eric, Yay, and two of the foreign guests, both wiry, both suspiciously good at moving quietly. You half joke that they must be descended from ghosts. One just shrugs. The other smiles in that way that says, maybe. You're handed your weapons, a dull spear, a net, a wooden sword that feels like a toddler's toy compared to your training blade, and your pride, a leather-wrapped shield with your own carving etched along the rim, a small, angular bear, mid-roar. Before the signal horn sounds, Brynja whispers, 10 goats say we win. You squint. You still have goats? She grins. I never said they were mine. The game begins with a howl. Your team scatters into the trees, staying low. Eric tries to bark commands like a true leader, but the foreigners ignore him entirely, melting into the woods like smoke. You follow Brynja instead. She's faster, smarter, less talk, more doing. The goal? Capture the other team's banner and make it back to camp. Easy in theory. Not so easy when the forest is full of traps, false paths, and surprisingly aggressive squirrels. You skirt past a creek, where someone has cleverly laid out moss-covered stones that look solid, until Eric tests one and sinks with a squelch and a curse. You offer him your hand with all the smugness you can muster. Told you to stay light on your feet. He glares, then takes it anyway. As you move deeper into the woods, you find signs of the other team. Broken twigs, a half-bitten apple, a footprint, bare, oddly small, and veering toward a rocky outcrop. You pause. That's not one of ours. Too small for Eric, Brynja agrees. Too clean for you. You fire back. She shoves your shoulder, friendly-like. Following the trail, you climb the ridge, moving slow, quiet. The world softens. Birdsong, distant surf, and the steady thump of your own heartbeat fill your ears. Then you see them. Two figures crouched near the base of a pine tree. One is tying a tripwire. The other is watching the path you just took. You crouch. Wait. Count to 5. On 6, you hurl your net. It snags the watcher, who yelps and falls backward, taking down their partner in their half-made trap. You charge in, laughing, and tag them both with the flat of your spear. Game rules. If you're tagged, you sit. No complaints. Brynja arrives just as you reclaim the small leather banner hidden in the underbrush. She raises an eyebrow. Nice net work. You pant, grinning. I'm collecting a debt. In goats, you dash back to camp as the sun reaches its peak, the banner flapping like victory in your hand. You're almost there, almost safe, when a figure drops from a tree in front of you. It's one of the foreigners, the ghosty one. You both freeze, then charge. It's a mess of limbs and wood and breathless laughter. You twist, roll, catch him off guard with your shield edge. Not a strike, just enough to knock him sideways. You throw the banner to Brynja. Run! She runs. You don't see if she makes it, because now your face is in a bush and your opponent has your leg. You twist again and end up both tangled, laughing, breathless. You fight like a bear, he says, not unkindly. You grin. That's the idea? Back at camp, your team is declared the winner. Brynja holds the banner high. Eric looks vaguely proud, possibly because he's now clean and dry. You're muddy, bruised, and ecstatic. After lunch, dried fish, onion soup, and questionable berries, you're given a rare treat: rest. Some of the older warriors lounge in the sun, sharpening blades or playing a dice game that involves chicken bones and intense cursing. You wander. Eventually, you find yourself near the Skald's fire. He beckons you over without looking up. Want to hear about the woman who shot Odin? You blink. That's a thing? He shrugs. Historians still argue whether it was metaphor or madness, but the tale remains. He tells you of a warrior poetess who once challenged the gods by writing a saga so blasphemous that it pierced the divine. Her village was destroyed, but her story lived on. Whispers claim she was seen years later, living with wolves, still composing insults in verse. You stare at the flames, heart thudding. I want that, you whisper. He doesn't ask what you mean. He just nods. As the sun sets, the camp winds down. You help clean the remains of the feast, scrape char from the kettles, and listen to a girl younger than you sing a ballad about sea serpents and lost love. It's peaceful. You almost forget tomorrow is the start of something bigger. Almost later, you sit beside Brynja beneath the stars. She offers you a piece of hard cheese and an unsolicited observation. You're not terrible at this. High praise. We'll make a shield line yet. The stars blink overhead. And somewhere in the dark, maybe just beyond the tree line, something watches. A shape. A feeling. Maybe it's just your imagination, maybe not. But for tonight, you're safe. You're warm. And your shield rests beside you like a promise. Dawn creeps in again, pink and pale as a wounded sky. Your muscles are stiff from yesterday's hunt, but the adrenaline buzz keeps you moving. Today's not about games or practice. It's about the sea. You trudge down to the harbor where the longship waits, its prow carved with snarling beasts that seem to watch you with ancient eyes. The smell of tar, salt, and wet wood is thick in the air. This is real. No drills, no fake enemies. You're told you'll be rowing. No escaping that. The ship creaks and groans as you climb aboard. The other warriors settle into their seats, oars in hand. You find a place midship, shield strapped to your back, spear resting by your side. Brynja smirks across the benches, clearly enjoying the fact you're not steering. The helmsman shouts a rhythm, slow and steady at first. You match your strokes to the beat, oars slicing through cold waves. The sea is vast and unforgiving. Your arms burn quickly. The salt stings your eyes. You swallow a mouthful of seawater more than once. Somewhere off the starboard side, a gull screams. You think of the stories, how Vikings navigated by the sun and stars, by moss on trees, by the flight of birds. They were masters of the sea, until they weren't. When storms came, the gods could be cruel. Your mind drifts. What if you were born centuries earlier, with no modern comforts? Would you survive the salt spray, the endless days of rowing, the endless nights in a cramped, creaking ship? Historians still argue whether Viking women actually went on raids as shield maidens or stayed home to manage farms and families. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between, with some brave souls stepping into battle and others holding the hearth. You glance at Brynja, who's gritting her teeth with every stroke. She looks fierce, like a storm herself. You admire that. Suddenly, the helmsman calls out a warning. Dark clouds blot the sky. The wind picks up. The waves grow taller, frothy crests hammering the hull. The captain barks orders. Everyone leans in, muscles taut, hearts pounding. The storm hits like a fist. The ship pitches violently. Water sprays over the sides. You grip your oar so hard your knuckles whiten. You think about drowning. You think about floating, lost. You think about the stories of the sea, how it takes, how it gives. You remember the tales your mother told you about the goddess Ran, who drags souls down to her underwater hall. Some say she's cruel. Others say she's just doing her job. You grip tighter, willing yourself to row through the tempest. Then suddenly, it passes. The sea calms. The clouds part. The sun breaks through the wet sky like a blessing. You gasp for breath, laugh with relief, and look around at your fellow rowers, tired, soaked, alive. The ship glides into a quiet cove. You disembark, legs shaky but proud. Nearby, a fisherman offers you dried fish and a grin. You realize this is what the Vikings sought: the freedom of the sea, the challenge, the unknown. It's terrifying. It's exhilarating. It's home. Later, as you dry off by the fire, you overhear a whispered debate among the older warriors. They argue whether the Viking Age was really about conquest or more about trade and exploration. You decide it's probably all true. And you, standing there with salt in your hair and firelight on your face, feel like you belong to all those stories. The warrior, the trader, the dreamer. Tomorrow, you'll face the village's next challenge. But for now, you close your eyes with the scent of pine and salt air filling your dreams. The morning is quieter than usual. No shouting, no clashing swords, no jokes from Brynja about how bad your hair looks after sea spray. The village moves with a slower rhythm today, one of reverence. You wake to the smell of smoke, not the usual wood smoke from hearth fires, but something sharper. Ritual incense, pine resin, dried herbs smoldering in slow curls. It's the day of the ancestors. Everyone wears something simple and dark, tunic, cloak, or scarf, often adorned with a small token passed down through family, a pendant, a carved bead, a braid of hair tucked in cloth. You tie a strip of leather around your wrist, a keepsake once belonging to your mother. It's worn soft, the stitching nearly invisible now. At the center of the village stands the Horg, the stone altar. It's not large or flashy, just a stack of uncut stones, lichen-covered and ancient. Some say it predates the village. Others whisper it marks the grave of the first settler who died here. No one knows. That's kind of the point. One by one, villagers approach, laying down offerings: bones, berries, feathers, bits of bread, flowers already beginning to wilt. You place yours, a smooth riverstone painted with a spiral, a symbol for cycles, for beginnings and endings. The skald begins to chant, his voice low and unhurried, weaving the air with syllables that almost make sense, like your brain recognizes the cadence but can't catch the words. You feel a shiver that isn't cold. This isn't about the gods today. It's about memory. As the smoke rises, you close your eyes and picture those who came before you. Not just your family, though they come first. Your mother's hands, strong and calloused. Your father's quiet humming while he worked. But also the Shieldmaidens who never made it back from raids. The farmers who died in the frost. The babies who never saw spring. You're told to light a taper candle and carry it down to the water. The whole village does this. Hundreds of tiny flames drifting out into the bay on little bark rafts. The wind doesn't blow hard. The gods are merciful, or maybe just inattentive today. The effect is stunning. Stars on the sea, floating slowly toward the horizon. Historians still argue whether the Norse afterlife was truly divided into neat categories: Valhalla for the brave, Helheim for the unlucky, Folkvanger for Freya's chosen, or if it all blended together in ways no saga ever captured. You figure it's probably the latter, because life's messy. Why wouldn't death be too? After the ritual, there's silence. Even the children seem to understand this is not a day for chasing chickens or throwing mud. You sit with Brynja on a fallen log, chewing dried fruit and not speaking much. Eventually, she asks, "Do you think they hear us?" You shrug. "If they do, I hope they're laughing. Otherwise, it's just really awkward." She snorts. "My grandmother used to say the dead listen more than the living. She said that's why ravens look sideways at you, because they're eavesdropping." You both glance at a raven perched nearby. It does, in fact, look sideways at you. Later in the day, you're led to the burial mounds on the hill. These are old, some crumbling, some still firm. Grass grows thick over them, dotted with wildflowers. You're told that in spring, the ancestors whisper through the petals. You lean close to one. No whisper. But you do hear wind. Close enough. Each family has their place. But you, as a guest, or now, a sort of Shieldmaiden in training, are invited to pay respects wherever your heart calls. You stop at a mound marked with an upright stone carved in runes. You can't read all of them yet, but one you do recognize: Dottir, daughter. You sit a while. Think, breathe. The sun begins to sink, gold light stretching long shadows across the mounds. A lone flute plays from somewhere down the hill, notes bending with the breeze. It's mournful and beautiful, sleepy. Even you think about how many people lived and died before you, how many stories got lost, how many faces faded into names, and how many names slipped into silence. You think about how being remembered isn't a given. It's a gift. And maybe that's why you're training, not just to swing a sword, but to leave a story worth telling. To etch your name into someone's future memory, even if it's just on a carved stone and whispered in a breeze. Back in the village, the skald recites sagas long into the night. Tales of battles, sure, but also of broken hearts, stolen cows, clever foxes, and one particularly brave goose. People laugh. People cry. A child falls asleep in their mother's lap. You sit cross-legged, arms tucked around your knees, feeling like the past isn't so far away. Like maybe it's wrapped around you all the time, like a second cloak. As you crawl into your bedding under the stars, you realize something strange. Today, you didn't swing a weapon once, and yet, it may have been the most important day of your journey so far. The calm of the Day of the Ancestors is swept away with the crash of hooves and barking dogs. You wake to chaos, not the scream of battle kind, but the "we've got visitors and they brought a problem" kind. At the edge of the village, a trader caravan has arrived, muddy and breathless, led by a wiry man with an elaborate beard braid and a tunic too nice for his own good. He claims he's from Hedeby, a major trading hub further south, and that he's on his way to the markets in Birka. Except, he's missing half his cargo and his guards. Apparently, someone or something ambushed them during the night 2 days north of here. You listen, standing near the back, as the trader explains with lots of dramatic gesturing and words like unspeakable and savage. You half expect him to faint onto a fur rug. Your chieftain doesn't flinch. Instead, she calls for volunteers. Brynja is already stepping forward before you finish blinking. You follow. A party is assembled to escort the trader safely through the nearby forest pass and investigate the site of the ambush. You're included, not because you're the strongest, but because you've proven you don't complain much, and your night vision is better than average. And maybe because your spear throwing's improved. You pack light, dried meat, a flask of mead, your spear, and the same crusty bread that could double as a building material. Brynja says it builds character. You say it builds jaw strength. You move out by midday, slipping between the trees like shadows. Pine needles crunch beneath your boots, and the wind whispers through the branches like it's trying to tell you something you can't quite hear. The forest is beautiful in that eerie kind of way. Moss hangs like drapes from bent branches. The air smells green, if that's a thing, and there's a quiet tension you can't shake. It feels like the woods are watching. Quirky detail of the day? One of the guards swears by a protection spell involving tying a toad's foot to his belt. You're not sure if it works, but he's made it this far without a scratch, so you decide not to judge. Historians still argue whether Norse travelers truly believed in such charms, or if it was more of a superstition meets tradition type of thing. Either way, it adds flavor. You come upon the ambush site by dusk. It's not pretty. The cart is overturned. Goods are scattered, broken amphorae, ripped cloth sacks, one sad sandal missing its mate. There's blood on the leaves, but no bodies. Your party spreads out to search. You find drag marks, not human. Boar? Wolves? Something bigger? The trail leads deeper into the woods, winding around a marshy hollow that smells like wet feet and disappointment. That's when you hear it, a low growl. Everyone freezes. A set of glowing eyes appears in the brush. Then another, and another. Wolves. Not the cute fairy tale kind. These are lean, wild, and far too familiar with what humans taste like. Weapons come out. You grip your spear tighter than ever before. Your breathing goes shallow, the way it does before something really stupid or really heroic happens. The wolves lunge. Time blurs. You swing, dodge, yell. Brynja is a blur beside you, moving with grim efficiency. The toadfoot guard gets knocked over, but the wolves seem confused by the smell and leave him alone. Go figure. In the end, your group manages to drive them off with smoke and steel. You're shaking, blood on your sleeve that isn't yours. One wolf lies still nearby, eyes open, tongue lolling. You say a quiet word over it. It fought, same as you. No glory in that, just survival. Afterward, you recover what cargo you can. It's mostly spices and cloth, with a few oddly shaped jars that turn out to be filled with imported oil, used apparently for smoothing hair. Brynja laughs. Guess you can finally do something about that Viking helmet you call hair. You resist the urge to throw a pine cone at her. As the group makes camp, you sit by the fire, chewing on meat you can barely taste. The trader is grateful. Grateful enough to hand out some silver rings and share a secret, a shortcut path to Burka that avoids the river trolls. You're not sure if he's joking. No one laughs. Because in this world, you never really know. You lie down wrapped in your cloak, back against a tree, and stare up through the branches. There's no moon tonight, just stars. You think about what it means to protect something, to walk into the unknown, not for glory or gold, but because someone needs help, because it's right, and because, deep down, you want to be the kind of person the sagas remember. Sleep comes slowly, but when it does, it brings no dreams. Only the steady rhythm of wind in the trees and the crackle of fading embers. You return to the village in the early morning, boots caked in mud hair smelling like campfire, and a noticeable scratch across your cheek. Brynja says it gives you character. You say it stings. The trader caravan, lighter but intact, rolls off toward Birka with a dramatic wave and a promise to tell stories of your bravery in the markets. Though knowing him, he'll probably say he led the charge with a flaming sword. Back in your longhouse, you collapse into the fur bedding, every muscle sighing in gratitude. But rest is a luxury in Viking life, and you barely get a nap before your name is called again, this time by a small voice outside. It's Sif, the blacksmith's daughter. She wants to show you something. Curious, you follow her to the forge, and what you find is fascinating. Her father, a burly man with a permanent soot mustache and no patience for small talk, has been crafting something new. Not a sword, not a spear. Armor. Specifically, lamellar armor. Small plates laced together like fish scales. It's more flexible than a solid breastplate and distributes force surprisingly well. You run your fingers over the surface, feeling the rhythm and the pattern. Smooth, cool, dense. Some traders from the east brought this design, he mutters. Said the Russ use it. You blink. The who? Ruski. Big fellas, beardier than we are, somehow. Historians still argue whether the Russ were originally Swedes or a Slavic tribe who learned how to row. Either way, they know their armor. It's a masterpiece, and he's made a smaller one, child-sized, for Sif to try on. She beams. I want to be like you. You try not to choke on that responsibility. Later, you help gather charcoal from the hills. It's dirty, gritty work, and you get it under your fingernails no matter how hard you try to avoid it. Charcoal fuels more than just fires. It's essential for smelting iron, one of the most critical tasks in your little society. Here's a fun fact. Vikings didn't make their weapons like medieval knights. They didn't have blast furnaces, but they did layer iron and carbon to create a pretty decent approximation of steel. Fringe tidbit? Some smiths swore that urine, yes, urine, helped the forge burn hotter. No one knows if it's true or if someone just got too lazy to fetch water. You're just glad you're not the one in charge of testing that theory. When you return, the forge is glowing like an ember swallowed by stone. Sparks fly with every hammer strike. The sound is oddly soothing, repetitive, percussive, ancient. You start helping more often, not because you love sweating next to molten metal, but because there's something powerful in making something real with your hands. A blade, a buckle, even a horseshoe. The smith lets you try your hand at shaping a blade. It's not good, crooked, uneven, the kind of weapon only a very desperate goat might wield. Still, he grunts, better than my first. Brynja visits one evening and finds you covered in soot, swearing at a bent nail. She howls with laughter. You've become a goblin. You throw the nail at her. It bounces harmlessly off her shield. You find a rhythm in this new work. Morning patrols, midday crafting, evening training. Your hands grow rougher, your arms stronger, your back sore. At night, you start dreaming of fire and iron, of glowing steel shaped by will alone. And maybe that's what life here is teaching you. Not just how to fight, how to forge yourself. You begin helping repair weapons and armor for others, fixing the chips and blades, replacing broken laces and shields, reforging bent axes. Each item has a story. Each nick, each scratch, a memory etched in iron. There's something poetic in that. Brynja starts calling you hammer hands. You pretend to hate it, but secretly you kind of like it. The village begins preparing for winter, and the forge is busier than ever. Hooks for drying meat, tools for wood cutting, nails for fixing roof beams, even decorative pieces, fibulae, brooches, and torques. Because even in the hardest times, humans crave beauty. One evening, the skald visits and recites a tale of a woman who forged a blade so sharp it could split the wind. No one knows if she ever lived. But as you sit by the fire, shaping a blade under the smith's watchful eye, you start to believe she might have, because now you know. There's power in fire, power in patience, and power in the steady clang of a hammer that turns raw earth into something that lasts. Winter slinks into the village like a cautious predator, quiet at first, and then all at once. The sky turns a sullen gray and stays that way. Snow falls in flurries, then blankets everything with a thick, muffling hush. Trees groan under the weight. The longhouse walls creak like old bones, and even the bravest warriors start to walk a little faster between buildings. You wrap yourself in layers of wool and fur, your breath a steady cloud, your boots crunching through the crusted snow. The world has gone still, but Viking life doesn't pause for winter. It adapts. Daily routines shift indoors. The forge, once open to the wind, is now barricaded with old boat planks. You work by flickering torchlight and the dull red glow of the coals. It's claustrophobic and oddly comforting, like being inside a dragon's belly. Meals grow simpler. Smoked fish, pickled turnips, stews thick enough to stand a spoon in. There's a strange joy in tearing bread with numb fingers, dipping it into something hot, and realizing you still have all your teeth. So far. Jokes come easier in winter. Maybe it's survival instinct. Or maybe it's just that you need to laugh when it's too cold to cry. Why don't frost giants raid in December? Brynja asks one evening. You raise an eyebrow. Because even they don't like freezing their butts off. You groan. Your chieftain institutes what she calls shield drills. Indoor sparring with wooden swords, shorter rounds, just enough to keep your edge without anyone losing a toe. It's more fun than it sounds. Except for the part where Brynja somehow always hits you in the same spot on your thigh. You give as good as you get, though. One well-timed feint earns you a bruise on her ego. She doesn't speak to you for an hour. Worth it. In the evenings, the village gathers in the hall. Fires roar, shadows dance on the walls, and stories fly like arrows. The skald tells tales of Folkvanger, the field where Freya receives fallen Shieldmaidens. It's not as famous as Valhalla, but the feasts are supposed to be better and the benches more comfortable. Historians still argue whether Freya and Odin were truly equal in their domains of the afterlife, or whether those myths evolved as societal roles shifted. Either way, you find yourself secretly hoping you end up in her hall. It sounds cozier. You pass the time with carving. Small things. A whale on a bone sliver. A bird with outstretched wings on driftwood. Your hands move without thought, like they remember something your mind doesn't. One night, the old seeress calls you over. She smells like pine resin and mystery. She runs her fingers across your palm. You dream of fire and oceans, she says, but you were always meant for the ice. You don't ask what she means. It's better that way. The winter brings moments of eerie beauty. Northern lights flicker like ghost fire across the sky. Wolves howl from the hills. And once, in the dead of night, you swear you hear the sea, even though it's miles away, frozen and forgotten. The village shrinks during the cold months, not in size, but in focus. Life narrows to the hearth, the stories, the warmth of bodies huddled close. You play knuckle-bone games with the younger children, craft amulets with bits of antler, help mend cloaks stiff with age. Fringe fact: some Viking cloaks were treated with fish oil to make them water-resistant. Effective? Yes. Popular with noses? Not so much. Your own cloak smells faintly like smoked herring. You've learned to live with it. One afternoon, a raven lands on the longhouse roof. Just sits there, watching. You try to shoo it away. It doesn't move. Brynja stares at it, then shrugs. Maybe it's Odin. You roll your eyes. Maybe it's just a cold bird. Still, later that night, you leave out a crumb of bread, just in case. Your dreams grow stranger. Images of waves crashing against a frozen shore, a sword buried in snow, a face you don't recognize calling your name, and always the whisper, Shieldmaiden. The forge gets quieter, the days shorter, the wind begins to shift, whispers of spring. The snow still clings to the earth like a stubborn story, but you sense the thaw beneath. And with it, the pull of the world beyond your village, a longing, like the stirring of a ship's sail before the wind arrives. But for now, you remain here, warmed by fire, tempered by cold, and shaped like steel in the quiet crucible of winter. Spring does not arrive with a trumpet blast, but with a slow, quiet relent. The ice breaks first, tiny cracks that multiply overnight into deep fractures across the frozen lake. Then the snow begins to recede, revealing brown, flattened grass that smells faintly of rot and hope. Birds return in pairs, squabbling like old married couples over nesting spots. Children run barefoot again, testing the mud with squeals of delight. You step outside and inhale, surprised by the sudden sweetness in the air. It smells alive, as if the entire land just remembered how to breathe. Your muscles are stiff. Your sword feels foreign in your hand, but your body knows the rhythm again quickly, like a dance you almost forgot. Brynja challenges you to a foot race up the hill. You accept and lose, barely. I let you win last time. She grins, hands on her knees. Lies and slander, you puff. With the ice gone, the boats return to the water. There's something sacred in launching a ship after months on land. Everyone gathers. Offerings are made. Bread, mead, a few coins pressed into the hull for luck. You step aboard and feel the way it moves beneath you, like it's waking up too. This time, you're not going far. A test run, just up the fjord and back. Still, there's a thrill in it. Wind in your face, salt in your hair. Waves slapping the wood in their steady cadence. The sea is your old frenemy. You respect it now, like a sharp-eyed cat that tolerates you, but never forgets a slight. You pass other longships along the coast, exchanging nods, signals, the occasional shouted insult, and you begin to plan. Whispers of distant raids filter in again, of rich monasteries to the west, of silver glinting like stars across the sea. The kind of stories that once filled your nights with fire. But this time, they don't burn quite the same. You're changing, and not just in strength or skill, in patience, in focus. You notice more now, the way the moss climbs the stones, the angle of a hawk's shadow, the softness in Brynja's voice when she sings old lullabies to herself, thinking no one can hear. At night, the village gathers again. But now, the stories are about you. They tell of the Shieldmaiden who held the pass, the one who learned to forge steel, the one who danced with wolves and chased ghosts through the snow. You laugh, embarrassed, but part of you savors it, not the fame, the remembrance. You carve more now, give away little pieces, a fish for the fisherman, a spiral for the seeress, a bird in flight for Sif. It's your way of saying thank you. Or maybe I'm still here. Historians still argue whether Viking women truly fought as warriors or were merely legends grown from exaggerated tales. But sitting here, surrounded by the life you've built, you know the answer. It's not either or, it's both. Spring deepens, green returns, the world softens, but you remain sharp. Brynja approaches one evening. She says the chieftain wants a scouting party to the west. Nothing major, just a taste. She's going, and she wants you beside her. You look toward the fjord, and something in your chest stirs again. Not longing this time. Readiness. You nod. You pack light. A blade, a comb, 2 charms, one carved by your hand. You leave behind your winter cloak. You've outgrown it. On the morning of departure, the village stands on the shore to see you off. Children wave. The skald blesses your voyage with a poem that doesn't rhyme, but earns polite claps. The blacksmith hands you a newly forged dagger. Small, balanced, beautiful. Every warrior needs a last line, he says. You grip it. I won't need it. He smiles. I hope not. Brynja boards first. You follow. The ship pushes out, oars dipping like clock hands into the sea. The village shrinks behind you, but it doesn't feel like leaving. It feels like carrying it with you. The wind catches the sail. The sea sings, and you, Shieldmaiden, answer. The sail fades into the fog, and your journey settles behind your eyes like the memory of a dream. You feel the weight of the sword at your hip, the pull of the sea beneath your feet, and the echo of laughter from a fire-lit hall far behind you. The chill of winter, the sting of salt air, the warmth of spring. It all lingers now, like footprints in soft mud, slowly fading as time drifts forward. The longhouse is quiet. The forge is silent. The waves are gentle tonight. You've walked through the story of a life both brutal and beautiful, fierce and fleeting. And even though you may never wield a sword or string a bow, something ancient inside you stirred, something that remembers how to fight for warmth, for story, for self. You've carved your place in the saga, not with fire or fame, but with presence, steady, brave, unfolding. So now, let yourself drift. Picture the snow melting in streaks down the hill, the last embers curling into smoke, the call of a raven carried far on a breeze that hums with memory. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles soften and sink into the furs of a longhouse bed that cradles you in shadow and silence. You made it. You survived the storm. And for tonight, you rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.